Hello and welcome to CTOs at Work podcast series. In this podcast series, we talk to chief technology officers, engineering head, product and technology leaders from all around the world and learn from them how they work, how they build and manage world class technologies and products, how they hire great talent, and many more things. I'm your host, Love Chopra, and I'm happy to introduce my co host, Puneet Kaura.
Hi guys, welcome to this episode. Excited to be a part of this.
And now I'm really proud and honored to introduce you to our today's guest. He's from Canada. He is really an amazing person. He has so much of diversified experience in the field of technology. He has more than 150K subscriber on YouTube, more than 100,000 students on Udemy. He is an entrepreneur, he is an investor, technologist, mentor, technology advisor, and he believes in bootstrapping your dreams. And he is Manuj Aggarwal. So with that
Thank
note,
you
I would
so
like
much.
to welcome Manuj. So welcome Manuj. It's a great honor to have you on the show.
Thanks a lot. That was a much more elaborate introduction than I deserve. So thanks a lot for that.
Thank you so much. Pleasure is all ours. So Manoj, I was going through your profile and I realized you had a wonderful career journey. So could you please
Mhm.
tell us about your career journey so far, how you climbed your career ladder and reached to this stage and become such an amazing inspiration?
Well, I again, I won't go as far as saying I'm an inspiration. I just try hard to work hard, and I'm very interested in learning about new technologies. So since I started off, you know, I, I was just fascinated how these machines that have, when I started, that was in 1997, and you could just give them some simple instruction and they can do a very complex job in a matter of seconds and very consistently. So I got really fascinated by that. And I remember I used to spend hours and hours of extra time in the lab. As you know, in those days, you had to book time to get access to a computer. I didn't have my own personal computer, so I used to take any time that was available in the evenings and late nights and whatnot. So that passion still lives on, although the focus slightly shifts towards as you make progress in your career. So earlier on, I was working on this was back in 2000, working on numerous web applications. That was the dot-com boom. Everybody was making websites, web applications, and what have you. And then slowly it shifted to larger systems. I started working in enterprise. So one of the core things that I have always done is try to look for niche technologies where there are a lot of technologies used these days, and even in any era of technology, there are some mainstream technologies and then there are some niche technologies which serve a great purpose, but they're used by a few companies or few enterprises. So I try to focus on that, and that journey led me to many very large scale projects in education, in healthcare, um, and then I did those large projects for about 10 years, and then I shifted my focus towards startups. So this was back in 2010 or so. So ever since, I've been doing a lot of startups, helping entrepreneurs, build their companies, build their technologies, bootstrap them, and also I've worked with many startups where they were struggling really badly, where their technology was not in the right place, even though they had investors, they had people who were willing to pay money for the product or the idea they came up with, but they were just not able to execute it. So I've been helping those type of entrepreneurs as well. So it's been, as I said, interesting, very interesting journey. But the key thing was passion for technology, solving complex problems for humanity using technology. This is a great power that we have as people who understand these technologies and can work with them. So I think it's almost like it's a responsibility that we share as technologists to use these technologies for the greater good, right?
Great. Interesting.
Hmm.
Very interesting. You rightly mentioned that many cases companies have lots of funds, they're able to raise funds. They are not able to technologically execute that. Yes, that
Yeah.
I also saw in a lot of different companies. People raise a lot of funds, but there's still the execution issues out there.
Yeah.
I also saw you also provide CTO as a service.
Hmm.
So what exactly that? Could you please talk about that? Because in India, this kind of concept is very new. And
Hmm.
as last week, I was talking to one of my friends, CTO, and he was so much got excited about hearing this. Oh, this kind of things we can get technology advisory at this level. So could you please talk
Hmm.
about that? That would be really great.
Yeah, so as I said, what you mentioned is correct because right now there's, what happens is whenever an industry experiences a very sudden growth, so it's like it's equivalent to a gold rush in California back in back in 1800s or whatever when they found gold. So everybody wants a piece of that action. So raising money becomes easier because once you have an idea and you have some level of you can build some level of trust with the investors. Getting that money is easy. Coming up with ideas is easy. Like it used to like I get so many people um, you know uh, talk about, hey, I have a brilliant idea. If you listen to this idea, you will just drop everything else and come join us. And then the key thing people don't realize is it's not the idea, it's not the money, it's the execution, right? Execution is where people fail miserably. And that's not just in technology, that's in any field, any endeavor that people undertake, politics or whatever, even your household. If you don't manage it well, it goes to it just crumbles, right? So so when I saw this, that a lot of people are heading into startups, they are taking money from other people, hard earned money, and they're also putting their own money up. And I was able to rescue a few. As I said, I was able to rescue a few startups, and they had spent millions and millions of dollars and years trying to execute, and they got nowhere. So then I realized, okay, I should be working with more startups and sort of showing them the right path to execute their technology. And that's where I came up with this idea of CTO as a service. I mean, I shouldn't say I came up with it, but when I started looking into it, I saw that a few other people are offering it. So I just started doing it myself. So you can call it mentorship, you can call it advisory service, what have you. It's basically just going into a situation, looking at a situation. If they want to start, like if they are at the starting line, I help them accelerate that execution. Or if they are stuck somewhere, they've already started, they're stuck somewhere, their software is not working, their technology architecture, it does not exist, their teams are either they don't have a team, or their team is working in a chaotic fashion. All these are very very typical problems that you see in startups. So I just try to resolve them based on the experience that I've gained. That's all.
Cool. Manuj, I saw that you work for Minehub Technologies right now, right, which is in
Hmm.
crypto space. Can you throw
Hmm.
some light on it? What your role involves? How is that technology being accepted? And what prompted you to go into a field that has been conventionally untouched by technology?
See, it's I want to clarify one thing. So this company Minehub is not in crypto space. It's in blockchain space, right? Which is people need to realize blockchain as a technology is not the same as crypto. So we need to separate them out. Blockchain has multiple advantages that it provides. Trust, distributed trust between parties who do not inherently trust each other, and immutability of data. Now, coming back to this use case of Minehub, we are talking about a real gold and silver and copper mining, like actual mining of minerals and metals, not crypto mining. Okay, so
Okay.
I want to make sure people understand that.
Right.
Now, that being clarified, mining has been one of, it has existed for ages. It's one of the, oldest industries, right? And it has been running with old-fashioned mechanisms, paper-based mechanisms, and sort of, trust-based transactions for hundreds of years. So what happened is, in these transactions, there's a danger of fraud. There's danger of mistakes. There's danger of missing records and all those things, right? So in order to make sure that trust is restored, and there's more accountability on every party that is involved in the mining industry, and it's a very very complex industry, right? So before we buy a piece of gold as jewelry or whatever, it goes through at least 10 or 15 steps. There are multiple parties involved, miners and smelters, and people who purify the metal, and then so all those parties have to trust each other, that hey, I sent you 100 tons of copper, and I got 100 tons of pure copper, not 99% copper and 1% something else, right? So this whole use case is going to be captured on blockchain and secured and made immutable. So
Got it. So what stage is this at?
so we are in development stage right now. Yeah. So yeah.
Got it. Got it.
Interesting. Interesting. So Manoj, as you have so much of diversified experience in working with
Mhm.
so many different kind of companies at different level and different scale and
Mhm.
different growth phases of all of those companies.
Mhm.
So I want to understand from your perspective, what you
Mhm.
think what's the ideal role of a CTO looks like in any company, because
Mhm.
it changed widely from one company to another company. So what's your
Mhm.
thought on that? What you think exactly how it should be like a CTO role?
Yeah. Yeah. So that's an interesting question, because what I've seen is, especially in the startup world, CTO has been used as a currency in itself. Whereas the founders want to hire technical folks, and in most cases they cannot afford it. So instead of money, they say, hey, we'll call you CTO, okay? So that's a currency that's used. But jokes apart, CTO, in my opinion, there are two main roles, right? One is to be the conduit between the business owners or the business, uh, understand the vision, the business vision, where they want to go, understand what are the challenges from the business point of view. So those may include how much time do we have to execute, how much resources do we have the money in the bank, do we have access to funds so that we can build a team, or we don't have uh, we cannot spend freely, so we need to control the amount of money we can spend on. All those things need to be balanced from the business point of view. Once you understand the business, now you need to translate into technical execution, right? So if you're working with a team, you need to make them understand what are the priorities, how do you want to build the system, the software, how do you want to set up the technology so that it aligns well with the business vision. So for example, if a company has $10 million to execute their technology, and obviously in that case, time to market is critical, because we have the resources to hire and build the technology. But the sooner we get to the market, the more stable the product, the more functional the product is, the better for the business, right? So in that case, the
Right.
CTO's role will be to make sure to hire a top star team, and just knock it out of the park as quickly as possible, right?
Right.
Whereas in some cases where the business has a vision, but they don't have the money, but they just need to bring a prototype to the market so that they can raise the money. In that case, the execution style will be quite different, right? So you won't focus on making sure the product is perfect, but it needs to highlight the core core use cases, or core ideas that the target customer will understand. So the execution will be quite different. It will be more, focused on getting something out in a crude way, but functional way, and building a prototype out of it. So that's the idea of the CTO, where it's he or she sits between the business and the people who can execute. So that's one aspect. The second aspect is, again, going back to execution. Managing the process, managing the teams, making sure they are motivated, making sure they are executing based on certain guidelines, certain standards. Even if execution is fast, we should not we should not relax the quality standard. So maintaining the quality and all that. So all these responsibilities are, in fact, I think, the core responsibilities for a CTO.
Got it.
Okay.
So this was a really precise, differentiation between launching in a mature market and launching in a new market, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Manuj, one thing I want to understand is you've been involved with a lot of startups which have
Mm-hmm.
constraints with both capital and
Mm-hmm.
all the other axes. And in a
Mm-hmm.
world where top talent is being pursued by the big four and companies which have a
Mm-hmm.
lot of capital, how do you go and hire the best folks? Or what has been your methodology about hiring top quality talent in spite of having constraints of capital
Mm-hmm.
and brand?
See, humans are driven by multiple passions, right? So money is not everything. In fact, if you read a few books, there's a famous book called Drive. I think uh, I can't remember the name of the author, but in there, the author describes that the money is not the only factor that drives people. It's their intrinsic values, the autonomy of doing the work and working on exciting projects and gaining mastery of their skill are some even stronger drivers that push humans than money, right? So when you hire for startup which does not have same amount of resources, then you need to show the vision of the startup and show how that team will grow, not maybe not financially at the in the initial stage, but professionally and as a in terms of their personal development, right?
Got
So
it.
they'll get more responsibility, they'll get they'll get to understand how to execute faster, how to make sure that we don't fail, and all these things are very valuable skills to learn, right?
Right.
So obviously you need to believe in the startup's vision first, and then you need to sell that to the candidates. Now, not everybody will buy in.
Right.
Some people,
Right.
obviously they want to work for the larger companies, work with have the security of a larger company. But some people will see the vision, and the other aspect is, if they join the startup early enough, and if the startup does well, they will make, in the long run, even financially, they'll be much better off
Much
than
better.
working in a larger company. And then the larger companies, you have the bureaucracy and all that. Startup culture is quite different. There's flat hierarchy. You basically tend to do. You get a lot more freedom and autonomy. The culture is different. It's more fun environment, more dynamic environment. So whoever gets attracted to this type of culture and environment, they join. But I'm not going to say it's easy. It's one of the toughest
Right.
jobs of assembling the team, finding the right candidates, making sure they are as passionate. But it is what it is, right? So these are the things that one can use to build the team.
Got it. Manuj, one additional point in this direction, since we're talking about hiring, any specific techniques that you have employed to identify such talent, or anything specific which helps you identify such people from the other crowd which wants to go to a big company? How do you
See,
ideally? Yeah, please.
yeah. See, there are a few traits, right? One is experience. So what kind of track record you have. That's easy these days. You can look up LinkedIn, and you can basically find out almost the clear history of somebody's career, and then you can find out more about their coding. Let's say if you're hiring for engineering roles on github.com, or check out their activity on Twitter and whatnot. So it gives you a good idea of what kind of person they are. Secondly, attitude. This is where you talk to the person. So even if some people may not have the right experience, maybe they are fresh out of college, but they have this passion to improve themselves, learn, and you can see this passion. So this type of passion and attitude is again a key factor. So ideally, you should have experience and attitude, but if you don't have the experience, but you have the attitude, that's okay. But if you have the experience and you don't have the attitude, I don't think that'll work, because that
Right.
that causes a lot of issues. So the combination of these things will you know will basically give you the right candidates for the team.
Good.
Great.
Right.
Additionally, Manoj, I am also want to ask one thing which you mentioned initially, a very good point as CTO as a currency.
Mhm.
So generally, in many startups, people the first time CTOs are those who are somewhere known to CEO, or somewhere it
Mhm.
is the given title. Okay, and from now
Mhm.
you are a CTO of this company, and then the
Mhm.
company start executing. They grow, they become from one people company they become 2, 3, 5, 20, 30 people company, and they grow in size.
Mhm. Mhm.
Now, at that point of time, it requires set of different skill set, which
Mhm.
probably that CTO didn't had earlier, but it
Mhm.
requires certain set of skill set which the CTO need to acquire on a regular basis. So, what's
Mhm.
your
Mhm.
thought on that? How the one can actually grow? So, like CTO now has both the responsibilities. He has to manage the product and engineering. Parallelly, he has to
Mhm.
grow himself up
Yeah.
on altogether different skill sets.
See, to answer the question, uh, our industry is slightly unfortunate in this regards, that these patterns, like in our industry, we have design patterns that we tend to follow, right? But these design patterns for building the company have gained roots, which I think is kind of dangerous, where people automatically think, okay, I want to launch a startup, I need to raise money automatically. I mean, they have no idea, they have no product, they just go out there, start raising money for and they forget, traditional businesses are not made that way. You first make a business, and then you make a business and then you raise money, right? So this paradigm of raising money and having a hierarchy of CEO and of founder, CEO, and CTO, CEO, even though they have absolutely no work to do, is like, it's ridiculous, right? So the right way to do this is, go study how traditional businesses are built. Even if somebody needs to open a corner store, they're not going to say, okay, you know what, I'm the CEO of the corner store, I need a CTO and a VP of food supply or whatever. They'll say, okay, I need four people to manage this store, and I'm going to be one of them, and I'm going to do anything that it takes, right?
Yeah.
Regardless of the
Right.
time, there's not going to be any titles or whatever. So if we look at it from that point of view, maybe externally we may need to have some officers of the company to represent the company, but internally it should be like, okay, guys, we need to build a business. So whatever we need to do, let's start building. When you do things that way, you automatically learn. There is no escape. You have to learn whatever needs to be done, and that is the real experience of becoming an executive. You you start to do things, and things don't work as life happens. You have to deal with so many different priorities and issues that come up, and when you start to balance them, and provided you have the skill set to do that, um, you automatically gain that is the experience. Nobody There is no school for there is no school for CEO or CTO or CEO. It's all hands-on experience, and when you put aside all those titles and everything and just focus on building a business, that is the real education that you need to become, to be assume that role intrinsically, right? Become a true
Got it.
officer of the company.
Very
Got it.
interesting. Very
This is a
interesting.
very contrarian thought in the times of abundant venture capital.
Well,
Right.
this is what this is what when I work with any startup, I tell them, hey, focus on building a business. Forget about all these paradigms that have been fed to you. Like in every industry, it's like how do you call it, these misconceptions, they become core beliefs after some time because they've been repeated so many times, right?
Right.
And nobody looks at the underlying. There have been studies done where they say if the company raises too much money, it's an absolute like sure shot cause of failure, because
Cause of death.
money is something that affects people psychologically,
Yeah.
just like titles affect people psychologically.
Right.
I've seen people change overnight. One day they're called a senior software developer, and the next day they're called CTO, and the personality changes. They become a different person,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
And the same thing happens when a founder is struggling to come up, kickstart their startup, and they get a $2 million check in the bank from the venture capital. Like it's hard to handle that kind of money overnight, right? So they
Right.
automatically go into this overdrive of, okay, what I'm going to do, I'm going to launch 5 projects now because I have the money. Whatever,
Right.
these kind of mistakes start to happen, typical mistakes, right?
Typical.
um, Instead, this is again going back to my bootstrapping methods as well. Start to build the product, figure out some revenue streams, and prove that the market is going to pay you some money, and then that is a real business, and then go out there and raise money. Then, you know,
Got it.
yeah.
Yeah, that's the ideal way, but
Mhm.
people choose the path of convenience when capital is available so easily, and then
No,
you're
that's what
absolutely
I'm trying to say. Yeah, that's
yeah.
what I'm trying to say. If they actually look into the trends, if you raise more money than you need or raise too early, it's actually a good sign that the startup is not going to go anywhere.
Right.
Great. Manoj, I saw in your profile, you are a great example of persistence. So you
Mhm.
have founded your company TetraNoodle almost 20 years back. So I'm really
Mhm.
curious to know what was your initial vision, how it started, where do you see right now, or in a nutshell, like how a guy from a Delhi started and reached to this stage, and now he is settled well and helping so many different varieties of companies.
Mhm.
I'm
Yeah,
curious.
actually, I was born in Jalandhar, which is very very small town. Delhi was comparatively, like, it's a big city. So yeah, I mean, I come from even more humble beginnings. So um, we didn't even have a engineering college in our
Wow.
city until that one year. I got lucky. I think they just started a few classes when I was looking for my degree. But it's an interesting journey. When I started the company is very small. Like, I for the longest time, I was the only one, and my wife helps out in the administrative part, accounting, and things like that. And the core reason again was, I have, as you can tell, I have a slight problem with authority. So when I started working for a few companies, I was like, you know, I think I will be better off, and I will be able to serve people better if I just go on my own. So it's my consulting company where I am the consultant, I am the
Consultant, CEO.
whatever. But now, since we are expanding, we have a small team who's helping me out. But yeah, I mean, that's sort of the journey where um, I used to work with one client over a longer period of time, and now lately, I've been working with multiple clients, uh, helping multiple startups. Did that answer the question? Did I miss any question in there?
One thing I am curious about it, you saw this much before the Coursera and the Udemy's that online education will go mainstream. What was the
Mhm.
thought, and how did you come to that conclusion?
Well, there is not. I mean, there is no foresight in as such. Like, every aspect of our life is going to go online, or will be connected by technology, or will be overtaken by technology. It's
Okay.
just a matter of time, right? So since it's we are trying to make progress in quantum computing, general AI, which will think and have intuition like humans. As these things come in, they are bound to take over everything. So that's one thing, right? So the second aspect is I worked on a very large education related project back in
Right.
started in 2005, I believe. That was for Pearson. So Pearson is a very large publishing
Publishing.
house. Yeah, so they wanted to digitize their content because even everybody saw that coming, that okay, things will go digital. So we worked on that project, which was incubated as a startup within Pearson. So Pearson is a Fortune 500 company, but within that, this was incubated with 3 or 4 people. So it was very much a startup mode, and we worked with multiple teams across the world. It was just like a wild ride. So over 5 years, we built it up into a product which generated like $400 million revenue. So that was like a humongous success. Millions of students. So that cemented the fact that this is where education is going. And the paradigms are changing, right? The structure of education, like going from grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, that's changing because uh, everybody is different. Everybody's interest in different subjects is different, so it's becoming more personalized. It's becoming more rather than structured, unstructured education, so you can learn pretty much anything that you want. And I believe that is the way it is going to be. And I think if I can be as bold as saying, like in maybe 20 years, all these institutions as we know them, and universities, I think they are going to dissolve.
Wow,
Okay.
that's a bold statement.
Great.
Good.
So Manoj, I see the business like you into education and this kind of technology space, whether we advisory technology or be it a CTO as a service or any kind of similar role. But more or less the major challenge I think is lies into reskilling yourself, because every time you saw different kind of project, different assignment, or people have different kind of needs. So how do you manage that challenge, or what's your advice for all of those techies who wants to reskill themselves?
Okay. Reskill is necessary because just like any other profession, you have to look for better tools. As I was saying earlier regarding mining, I think human civilization discovered, I think, copper, and then they discovered iron, or I can't remember like which way. Like I think iron came for the whatever, and then they started mixing the metals together. So every field, every walk of life, you need to pick better tools, but they are used when you see real value in them. Don't start using a tool just, or a framework, just because it's in fashion, like people are talking about it, or it's going to look good on a marketing web page or whatever. So stick to the basics, keep things simple. Once again, focus on building the business, and business is built based on building a quality product. Quality products can be built using any technology, right? So yes, there are differences in technology, like certain tools and frameworks can do certain things better. But if you really break it down into the basics, any major piece of technology can build any type of product. So if you focus on building the product and leaving everything aside as a secondary motive, or a secondary just a means to the end, then it doesn't matter because as I said, it happens organically. Because what happens is, let's say, for example, I did not use cloud for until 2010, and then all of a sudden we had to grow so fast, cloud was the only option. Organically we had to learn cloud, right? So
Right.
before that we did not say, okay, this Amazon thing looks really good, so let's
Yeah.
start doing it. We went there. Obviously we had R&D teams working on new innovative things which were 3 years out or whatever. So I'm not saying stop R&D, but don't start to drop everything that is already working and start looking at new technologies, because that comes organically as the business grows. You will be forced to adopt new tools, technology. So that's my advice. Like, go with tried and tested until your business is viable, and then this learning happens automatically. Like, these tools
Right.
come up in your journey automatically. You need to pick them up, and
That's a great point. I see a lot of startup teams just changing their stack to align themselves to what is popular in the market. React.js being the latest in fashion thing, and as a matter of fact, all JS framers. So that's a great thing. Don't change what works for you.
well, yeah, I mean, you can go with one and stick with one,
Right.
right? But typically, what happens is, and this is due to lack of experience sometimes or whatever, they pick React.js and then they play around with that for 15 days, and then they run into their first problem and they go look for the answer. Stack Overflow, they can't find the answer, or they say, oh, no, React
Right.
is no good, no good. Okay, let's move on to the next framework, and then they repeat the cycle, right?
Right.
Um, so rather they should just say, okay, let's spend 7 days, compare 3 or 4 frameworks, pick the one that we like, and then stick to it, right?
Stick to it.
Until it has been proven with beyond any doubt that it is not going to be useful for our project, which is
Got it.
rarely the case. So stick to it and then solve the problem, and that is where the real learning happens.
Yeah,
Got it. Since
very true.
we are on the topic of reskilling, Manuj, so hard reskilling, we've talked about learning new technologies, being in the mode where you keep on exploring. I want to touch upon the soft side of skills, like being a technology leader, you have to develop a team, probably have multiple layers of people below
Yeah.
you. How do you
Mm.
train yourself to become a technology manager from the person who's writing code? What
Mm.
strategies did you adopt or work towards?
So I had some advantage in this case where um, I told you my early I was born and brought up in a small town, and my business my father had a business of his own, family business. So I worked in that business for a while, and I picked quite a few soft skills from the age of 15 upwards,
Okay.
because I started working at 15. Um, so those soft skills are basically all it is, communication and understanding uh, human to human, sort of human needs, right? Human needs are universal. Like, everybody wants peace of mind. Everybody wants, prosperity for themselves and their families, and they want a bright future for their kids. Connecting with people on that level, trying to understand what their priorities are, and try to help them, your peers and your direct report, that goal. Like, it's not all about, okay, produce technology and write code, uh, deploy these servers. It's also about, okay, how do you want to educate your kids? What can I do to help you in that regard? What are your financial goals? How can I help you to get there? So these are personal development things which you need to help your subordinates with, so that they can feel like, all these needs are being met, right?
Right, right. We seldom have these conversations, and they turn out to be the most important when it comes to retention and probably getting the right kind of people on your team. Right.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's a great point.
Yeah, very interesting. And Manuj, as you were talking about and giving a lot of examples about the product side and choose choice of technology, uh, so definitely you have so much of experience building so many different kind of products. And so, what was your aha moment in all that journey? What was the kind of product you think that I built that, I engage on that engineering part, or product building part, and I was like, aha, wow, that's the thing. I'm really proud of it.
Um, okay, so I mean, there are many answers here, right? And I believe there are many questions as well. But the aha moment, in terms of my aha moment, like how my focus shifted. Earlier, I was a hardcore technology guy. Like, I didn't want to have to do anything with business. I just wanted to write code and make sure it was like beautiful code and worked and all that. But then slowly I started realizing technology for the sake of technology is it has no meaning, right? If it doesn't solve the business problem, and people are not willing to pay for it. It's just hobby. So I started taking a deep interest in business side of things, trying to understand how companies are built, how products are built, how services are built, how people pay for them, how do they come to know that you have a product that will solve their problem, all these things. So starting from product management and visioning the product, and marketing side of things, and all those are all those things are the puzzles that you need to make sure they fit to build a company. So these were aha moments in terms of realizing there's a whole bunch of other things that people need to understand, not just technology, to build a business. And in terms of um, you know in terms of specific projects, obviously the one of the biggest projects, biggest successes I worked for was the Pearson project I told you about. So that was amazing, to be able to help so many students, and touch so many people's lives with that product, and build a successful product for the company as well as for the customers. And then the startups that have helped, a few startups who, as I said, spent years and millions of dollars, could not get their technology to work, and now they're using the technology that I helped them build, and they're thriving. So that was quite interesting, and huge challenge, but satisfying outcome.
Very interesting. And just out of curiosity, I have to ask, do you still code?
I code for like fun for my personal projects. I have like different interests. Back in 2008, I started taking interest in stock markets because I had no clue how the markets used to work. And then with that shock, I started saying, okay, let me figure it out. I've been doing quite a bit of like developing algorithms to understand the markets and trade the market. So like I do code for those type of fun projects, my personal projects.
Okay, great.
Mhm.
And one thing I also want to understand as we are discussing this tech and product part. So let's say if somebody wants to start a startup, especially utilizing the blockchain technology. So what's your recommendation? How one should begin and where to begin? Because when you look at blockchain spectrum, it's like right now widely diversified. There are so many open source frameworks are available. So what would be your recommendation? What would be the reliable frameworks, and how one should begin with their products into the blockchain space?
Mhm. It's a wrong question to ask, in my opinion, right? So you cannot say, okay, I have a tool. What can I do with this tool? Uh,
Right.
I need to do something. Which tool do I need for to do? That should be the question. You should start in, uh, look around for the problems, uh, understand what blockchain is, what kind of problems it solves, and then look for a problem and an industry where it exists, right? And
Okay.
then you maybe bring in blockchain, or you can say we started talking about blockchain, we came across this very compelling use case where blockchain may not be necessary, but technology is necessary. So let's bring that in, right? So going back to the basics of building a business, you do not start with stating first. Start by stating the problem first. That
Got it.
way, you need the tools.
So I would make this question a little more specific. What prompted you guys to choose Hyperledger?
I can't go into specific details about that. I mean,
Okay. Okay. Understandable.
it's a pretty large initiative, and yeah, obviously there were many factors.
Okay.
Interesting.
But that being said, Hyperledger or any other technology, again, don't go with any favorites in mind or any specifics in mind. Try to understand the try to understand the use cases. So just on generic terms, I can tell you Hyperledger is a private, uh, which works differently than uh, you Bitcoin. So those are public blockchains. So obviously, if you you're working in enterprise, most likely you need a private blockchain. So these are the subtle differences. You need to understand these technologies and what are the use cases, what are the benefits they provide. Then you look at what the business problem you're trying to solve, and then you pick the right technology based on that.
Cool.
Very interesting. Interesting. Well, Manuj, you must have heard this beautiful quote which says, "We learn from failures, not from success." So, according to you, what do you think is your biggest failure or challenges, or in better word, I would say, what's your war story, and what was your learning from such incident?
There are so many war stories I can. Um, there's like I can't even pick one. I mean, there have been cases where you know, people, uh, there were instances where you know senior VPs or CEOs, somebody was showing a demo latest version of the software in front of like thousands of people, and we the server. So the times where um, uh, the at a critical time, let's uh, teachers need to take attendance for students, and the software failed. So now this is you know a very problematic situation where the kids want their recorded in the registers, but the teachers cannot move forward. Or similar things happened where they were conducting examination and the system didn't work. Or in case of healthcare, clearing the records, so many issues happened along the way. These are typical situations. Like anybody who's worked in technology will say, these are not new. Everybody has experienced them, and for some reason or the other, these always tend to happen late at night or over the weekends. I will say that.
That's the Murphy's law of all the bugs.
It's very interesting. Yeah.
So, Manuj, do you have a schedule like once you face a problem like that? Obviously, how do you react to it? Is there a series of steps you follow to dissect and then try to make sure it doesn't happen again? Because getting angry at the team doesn't work.
No, no. You can't. I mean, like, why are you gonna be angry? Like, as you said, failures are part of life, so you have to anticipate them. So it's a part of a normal, cycle. Um, okay, so in order to address it again, uh, I may sound like a broken record, but first of all, figure out what is the business impact, right? So some people get all hyped up about something that nobody even uses, so there is zero business impact. So you don't need to drop everything and focus on things which have zero or very low business impact, whereas you need to drop everything and focus on things which have bigger business impact. Let's say the system is not working, or the system one thing typically which I've seen many times, the system starts to send out hundreds of emails to clients, and obviously it's a very very bad user experience. So these kind of things are very customer facing and have a huge business impact, reputation impact. So the way that you need to do is, first of all, if you're bleeding very hard, just don't try to fix the wound, just try to stop the bleeding. So do something immediately to stop whatever ill effect happening, or if something is working, try to make sure that you have backups and bring the backups online, so that people who are waiting for the system to be available, they can at least get their job done. And then once the bleeding stops, then you start the diagnosis phase and start to look at logs, start to look at the timeline of what happened, how it happened, who logged in, what kind of data they were uploading. And this happens only when you anticipate that you will run into these situations. So you may take measures, have system backups, you have database backups, you have application logs, you have system logs. Everything needs to be in place and accessible. So it's like preparing for fire drills, right? So when we go into any public building or office buildings, they regularly have fire drills. They know in case of emergency what needs to happen, who needs to do what. Right? So
Right.
same thing we need to do in there will be a fire someday in terms of something will break. At that point, who is going to do what and how will they do it? In fact, sometimes I even do these type of drills to say, okay, let's simulate a failure, and
Okay.
let's see what will happen on if this happens on the day. Uh, so the team gets into that mode of
Firefighting
anticipation
mode.
rather
Right.
than reacting. They are proactively, they are anticipating it. They know exactly what to do. They are calm and collected. It's regular part of the business, right?
Got
That's
it.
very interesting.
That's an interesting idea, having firefighting drills for your team.
Yeah.
You have
Yeah. So you mean that everyone should take their failure as an opportunity to set up their processes right, practices right, and do rigorously follow that. Very interesting.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, failures are the only reason why you learn. I don't. I mean, I think humans are we are pretty lazy. We have continuous success. We tend to get very complacent, and I don't think real growth happens when we are continuously successful.
Yeah.
Real growth happens only when we fail, and then we try to find solutions to that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Great. Great.
Mhm.
It's very interesting. So now let me shift my gears a little bit and let's talk about something interesting. I found something very interesting on one of your blog I was going through on Medium. You recommended that
Mhm.
meditation is highly recommended for tech professionals. So what's your thought on that?
Mhm. Yeah. Well, I speak directly to tech professionals because I belong to that group. So I think I have earned a little bit of right to talk to them directly. But in fact, I think this applies to everyone. We deal with a lot of stresses these days. A lot of information is being thrown at our minds are overloaded, right? Like
Yeah.
we have 24-hour TV channels, like thousands of TV channels, social media,
Yeah.
all these news, everything is coming at us, and on top of that, we have to run our families, our work, our businesses. So our minds have not evolved to handle this much uh, information overload, right? So in order to sort of counterbalance that, you need to quieten your mind. You need to say, okay, just like when you gain a lot of weight, then you need to go on diet, physical diet. When on regular basis our minds go on this information overload, so we just need to sort of empty it out a little bit, and meditation helps that there, which actually is a very core part. This is something that did not realize, and I realize that now. Meditation is not just about your mental health. uh, in fact, the more healthy you are mentally, it actually starts to affect your physical health as well, and vice versa. So it's actually a continuum. So the if you are stressful, it starts to show up as physical ailments, and obviously it starts to affect your performance, or it starts to affect your decision making capacity. So reaching out internally is very important for you know a healthy balanced life, in my opinion, especially for engineers in our industry, because we deal with a lot of stress.
Yeah, very interesting. And even these days, we can use all of those tracker, EEG devices, and all to track that.
Mhm.
Right. There are meditation apps now, but
Yeah,
I guess just the practice and the discipline of doing it every day trumps
Mhm.
everything else.
yeah,
That's true. Now I'm not going to claim that I'm I'm there yet, but I try to do it as regularly as possible, and I have had really had good uh, I find it very useful, and I talk to other people and who have adopted this practice, and it's
mm,
universal truth. And then um, when you look at it more, there have been studies done, like scientific studies. So it used to be like a taboo topic, and people didn't talk about it, but now movie stars are endorsing this, and then it's something that is gaining traction quite a bit
Right.
now.
Yeah, now there are many interesting startups are coming into this space. Like Mind Valley is a great example.
Oh yeah, Mindvalley. I discovered them in January actually, so I've been quite active participant in that.
Okay.
Oh, great.
I just uh, yeah. So yeah, I mean, they're a very interesting group.
Oh, wow, very interesting. So, Manoj, uh, I know we are running out of time. So, finally, I want to ask one last question. What advice you would like to share to professionals who want to bootstrap their dreams and launch their tech startup? Now, this is your favorite
So the
topic.
advice I can give them, yeah. So advice that I can give is that find a problem that needs to be solved. There are millions and millions of problems that every field, every walk of life, we as humans experience. So find that problem and make sure you know enough about that problem. So either you have in that environment, uh, your family background is such that you came into touch with that problem. So what I'm trying to say is, a lot of people start say, okay, I'm going to build a company based on AI, and their background is something unrelated altogether, right? So obviously, when push comes to shove, when things don't happen the way that they expected, they will have a lot of problems overcoming that. So try to educate yourself about the problem that and solve it in a very small way, like very very small way. Don't start building a feature. Um, Build a MVP uh, and solve a very thick slice of the problem. When you focus on that, you obviously do need some resources definitely to hire, or you can or you can. But the idea is you prove the concept that this is what the problem is, solve it using these technologies, convey your to your ideally just to try to find a customer who is different, pay you finance from your customers themselves, and try to start to get revenue coming in even before the product is built. And now, with a little bit of bootstrapping resources, if you can get a little bit of revenue coming in, now you have a proven business, right? Proven business that people are willing to pay money for.
Yeah.
And now, if you start to build the product, because you have the revenue, investors will come in and say, okay, we will evaluate your business at a much higher evaluation, first of all, and we will give you a much better deal. If you go to a VC and start raising money, when your idea is on paper, they will say, okay, I'll give you $100,000 for 50% of your company or 60%. So basically, you will lose pretty much the whole equity, because you have nothing. But when you go to investors after you have revenue, after you have a proven model, then you have much better negotiation power, and you can say, you know what, I'm only willing to give away 10% of my company because it's a proven business. It's build bringing in revenue. So if you don't want to take it, that's okay. I will just organically keep it growing, and investors see that, right?
Yeah.
So that is the right way of building businesses. That's how every business is built. Traditional businesses are not built by raising money and then figuring out what the product is going to be, if somebody will pay for it. That's not how it's done. So bootstrapping is just following the path of how other people build businesses and do it in a small on a small scale first, prove the concept, then scale it up step by step, and that's how things can be done easily.
Great, very interesting. So, Manoj, let's say if any of our audience wants to take your advice or help as we circulate this to entire CTO community throughout, so how they can reach out to you? What's the best way to connect with
They
you?
can, yeah, they can connect with me on LinkedIn or email me directly, manuj@tetranoodle.com. I'll share my I'll share the links and all that. Maybe you can just add it to the show description notes so that people can reach out easily, or they can go to my website, tetra, it's tetranoodle.com. So many people mistake it, they append the s, tetranoodle. So I tell them
Okay.
it's not a Chinese kitchen, but it's a single noodle. And there's a story behind it, because when I thought of the name, I was sitting in a restaurant called, noodle box. So from that restaurant and the name. And
Oh,
anyway,
very interesting.
reach out on social media, LinkedIn, um, and you can email me, Manuj at TetraNoodle. I'll share the email address as well.
Awesome. That's great. So that's comes closer to our end. So thank you so much, Manoj, for sharing such a great insight. It's really a great honor to have you on our show. And I'm sure whoever is listening to this podcast must have learned some great lesson out of it. And
Yeah.
if you guys have any question for Manoj, please feel free to write in the comment section and we will definitely get back to you. Thank you so much for being with us. Stay tuned for the next episode. Goodbye and see you soon.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.